Irwindale Speedway did actually close this time. They weren't kidding. Kyle Larson thinks that High Limit and World of Outlaws could eventually maybe merge. Plus, let's give an update on the NASCAR lawsuit and the teams, they got their charter. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. In the words of Chris Berman, let me be the first to wish you a Merry Christmas, although it's Christmas Eve, but whatever. You could watch this on Christmas. You could watch this 26th. I don't really know. I think that's Boxing Day in Canada. Shout out to all the Canucks out there. Let's get into the news though. This past weekend, Irwindale Speedway out in California had its last ever race, a farewell extravaganza, because it did actually close down for real this time. Every single year we hear Irwindale Speedway is going to close down, and every single year it somehow finds a way to survive. It's like Joey Logano in the championship in an even number year. You're like, all right, I mean, they did it again. Are they going to be able to do it the next time? Not the wait and see here. Eventually, luck will run out, and that's what happened with Irwindale. Just times came and passed it by, which really, really sucks, especially for the race community in Southern California. So after 25 years, Irwindale Speedway did actually officially close its doors on Saturday night. It was a long farewell extravaganza. They started racing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and people didn't leave until about 2:30 a.m. And we know that it was finally the official one because a skid steer picked up part of the asphalt on the front stretch and was tearing it up. So yeah, Irwindale Speedway will be replaced by a warehouse, because if there's one thing this country needs more of, it's more warehouses. I've been saying that for a long time. America would really be great if it had more warehouses. No, just kidding. It's worse off actually with more warehouses. I would much rather have Irwindale Speedway, a track that has been around since 1999, has hosted some big time events, the Turkey Night Grand Prix for a handful of years. It also had the Toyota All-Star Showdown, which was like the East-West type of race for the K&N series, or just in general for the lower ranks. It was like the home of Formula Drift in the United States. It has been a staple of the motorsport community. We, of course, saw Dominic Toretto go and beat the crap out of somebody there in Fast 9 or 10, can't remember which side or which movie we got the origin story of that, when he and John Cena became brothers of all people, but whatever. You got a lot of things out of Irwindale. Fear Factor was filmed there, and now it's been closed up. You had an unsanctioned ARCA West race to start off the day. You had 11 other categories on top of that. Some categories only had 3 cars in them. There were no payouts for any of these. It was just a come out and run if you want to type of situation. You had chain races, you had a jet car burnout, RV soccer, and then apparently there was a fireworks extravaganza that sounded a bit like a war zone. I'm sure it was more entertaining than anything that Battle Los Angeles tried to be, because that movie wasn't very good at all. At the end of the day, sucks to see Irwindale go away. I'm really bummed about that because, like I said, it's a staple of the motorsport community in Southern California. Not only did you lose the oval track, you also lost the drag strip as well, which means I think people have to go to Orange County now to do drag racing. But oval-wise, like, the options are pretty limited in Southern California now, which really, really sucks. It's a bummer overall. Hate it that it happened. But property value is really expensive, or worth a lot, valuable rather. That's probably the word I'm looking for. And yeah, it sucks. So Irwindale, RIP to it. Shout out to Diego Alvarado on Twitter, who posts a lot of good pictures. 2 of them, which you've seen in here. So yeah, bummer to see it go. Moving on to the topic of High Limit Series. So if you're familiar with it, Kyle Larson, Brad Sweet, they started up the High Limit Sprint Car Series in 2024. Well, technically 2023, it ran as a mid-week big money race. And then they decided to take it on a national tour in 2024 when they bought the All-Star Circuit of Champions and then partnered with Flow Racing to create a rival to the World of Outlaws tour. We saw drivers hop over to High Limit. We saw some drivers stay with World of Outlaws. And it's been kind of it's a split, right? It's Indy car and kart. That's exactly what this is, IRL and kart. But you have a pretty good split in terms of the people that went with each side. High Limit, of course, wants to kind of change the way that the sport is ran. And they didn't think that World Racing Group was doing a good job over there with World of Outlaws, so they started their own. Increased purse payouts. They're going to some different locations, some different markets, things like that. They're also on Flow Racing. And if you're not subscribed to Flow Racing, I think you should be, because the amount of coverage that you get, the amount of series, races, big time events that you get on Flow dwarfs what you get over on Dirt Vision with the World of Outlaws. So you have all this momentum over here. They want to have charters to change sort of the way that people are or how teams are operating and things like that. They're going down to Australia for a race just next week at the end of December. High limit is changing the way things are done. And I went to a high limit race this year at Lawrenceburg in Indiana, and it was a great time. Is there a big difference between it and the World of Outlaws? Not necessarily, other than the amount of merch that is outside for a high limit race. With World of Outlaws, you have to be full-time on the tour to be there. With high limit, you don't have to be that. World of Outlaws only allows their drivers 4 races a year to race outside of the Outlaws. High limit, they don't really care. Go take money away from World of Outlaws. Go take money anywhere else where you can go and race. They don't mind that at all. And the exclusivity that World of Outlaws and World Racing Group thinks that they're creating over there is actually, in my opinion, hurting their business model. So Kyle Larson talked to the Sports Business Journal. Obviously, they just had their inaugural season in 2024, heading off into 2025 with 61 races at like 30 different racetracks or something along those lines, and was asked like, hey, have you ever thought about potentially merging with the World of Outlaws? And Larson said, it's something we thought about before. It's definitely a thought that has crossed our minds, but we're not in a position that we're looking to do that right now. And he said, I imagine World Racing Group has probably done the same thing, thought about a potential merger there, which ultimately would be good for the fans. However, I think what High Limit is building on their side is much better than what World of Outlaws has right now. Don't get me wrong, World of Outlaws has a ton of equity in that name. They have the big time races. People know World of Outlaws. High Limit, though, they're getting big names over there. You have Kyle Larson, you have Brad Sweet, you have a number of other guys that are in that series. I mean, heck, Corey Day just made his name there this year as a rookie. Now he's going over to do a NASCAR program on top of that. But you have 2 different competing series, but I think that Flow Racing is much more accessible than what Dirt Vision is. Dirt Vision's expensive. You also have to pay to watch the Knoxville Nationals every year. Yeah, you paid your subscription. Guess what? It's a pay-per-view on top of that. Just feels like a real knife in the side to be like, hey, appreciate all your money. We know you want to watch the biggest race of the year. Fork over another, I don't know what it is, 40 or 50 bucks. It's just kind of annoying on top of that. But Flow Racing hasn't done that as of yet, and they seem really happy with what High Limit has done this year. Flow says that High Limit has averaged 100,000 unique viewers per event, which is really, really good because that's better than like what IMSA did at Sebring earlier this year. So they were around 80,000. So the fact that they're outdrawing them on Flow Racing is really impressive. Now, obviously, some races are going to be lower, some races are going to be higher, but overall, an average of 100,000, not too bad. I'm excited to see what High Limit does in 2025, especially building on the momentum that they had from 2024 and kind of seeing if we get another driver to hop over and make that switch, or team rather, from World of Outlaws into 2026 and hop over to High Limit in 2026. Have to wait and see how all that plays out. But I think what High Limit's building over here is certainly more appealing than what World of Outlaws has been doing. NASCAR is not getting their way so far in their lawsuit with 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports, at least not with the new judge, Kenneth Bell, who has been very pro-team and was once again this week when he awarded the injunction to Front Row Motorsports, which allows them to take possession of the Stewart Haas racing charter that they have purchased effective immediately. NASCAR has to allow them to do that. NASCAR, of course, has said that they will appeal this, but it went even a step further on Tuesday when NASCAR said that they would not block the injunction that 2311 Racing would have to file to get the same thing that FRM did, that charter from Stewart Haas Racing. They said that they knew that the judge in this situation would do the same thing that he did with them, so they've allowed the charter to go over to 2311 Racing without having to go through the formal process of the injunction. However, they also came to an agreement with 2311 Racing that 2311 Racing would not use that against NASCAR in their arguments, which seems like a pretty fair point. So as it currently stands, both of those teams will have a third charter from Stewart Haas Racing going into 2025. The argument around all of this was NASCAR doesn't want those charters to go to them because the charter agreement has already been signed for those 2 charters. These 2 teams have not signed the new charter agreement, so they don't want that to go over there. Then those charters get used, then they collect money, they collect points, everything gets all wound up into, this maze of Charlie Day trying to find out who Pepe Sylvia is. And now you're going to have to take all that apart if they, in fact, do lose this case and NASCAR wins. The judge has said that whatever is done can also be undone. The court will unwind it if it comes to that. So he doesn't seem too pressed about this. NASCAR, of course, not very happy about it. One of NASCAR's biggest, points here was the fact that they tried to get the teams on a bit of like a, hey, you got sick at Disney World, but you signed up for Disney Plus, so that frees us of this. They're like, hey, you can't sue us and continue on with this and get your charters for 2025 because you signed the 2016 charter agreement. It's like, well, technically, yes, but now that that charter agreement, well, has expired or will next week, then yeah, it kind of is a moot point. So right now, the judge has, like I said, been very pro team, and the teams kind of came out swinging with their latest filing this past week when they said that, or on Monday rather, they said that NASCAR, they said, quote, when a litigant does not have either the law or the facts on its side, it will pound the table, but defendant's pounding has become tired, familiar, and shrill. The teams are not dealing with the NASCAR side of this anymore. Now, NASCAR is kind of on the back foot here because whatever the new evidence is that the teams presented to the judge and the switch of judges from Frank Whitney to Kenneth Bell has certainly worked out really well in the team's favor. NASCAR has kind of been on this uphill battle. The pendulum has swung here because it started off with the teams having a lot of power, the judge siding with NASCAR, and then this judge swap has happened, and the new evidence comes out that the teams submitted, and it's done a complete 180, and the teams have all the momentum and all the power right now. So we'll have to see how all of that plays out going forward. One interesting thing, though, about this, the release clause that is in the charter agreement, which basically says that teams have to give up their ability to sue NASCAR if they want to race in NASCAR. The judge does not think that that will hold up in court, which is an interesting thing because he didn't make an official ruling on it. He just simply said that it doesn't pass the muster, and he doesn't think that, or he believes that it will violate the antitrust law. Obviously, we have to get to a hearing. We have to get to a trial before any of that happens. NASCAR, of course, is going to appeal this, and they have. They filed a brief on Tuesday, and in that brief was what their reasoning is here is that, teams are franchises, which for the sake of clarity and facts going forward, back earlier this year, Steve Phelps was on Kevin Harvick's podcast, and he said that charters are not franchises, but now they have referred to these teams as franchisees in their filing. Just throwing that out there just so that all the evidence is out there. I'm not saying one interpretation of this is correct or the other, just for the sake of having it out there. But because they are the franchisees, there's cases that are upholding the dealing arrangement between the franchisor and the franchisees that are pertinent to this. So basically, NASCAR is like, hey, we're the franchisor in this situation. You're the franchisee. We're doing these deals together. You have to do what we want to do. That type of thing, like the mothership. We steer, you follow. That type of arrangement. And then they also said that the teams aren't being sidelined in this situation. There's nothing that says that the teams can't race in 2025 because they can as open cars. Obviously, the teams don't want to do that because they want the money that comes with the charter and all the other benefits, which, duh, of course, you're going to want that. A lot to unpack here. Obviously, we're going to have to get through all of this. There is a hearing set for January 8th. We'll have to wait for that date to come around, get through the holidays and everything like that. And then there's a discovery period if this case is to progress on through December 19th, or not December, through September 19th, and then a trial date set for December 1st, trying to get this wrapped up before the 2026 calendar year starts, it sounds like it. So a lot to unpack there. Hopefully I kind of did a decent job explaining it, but man, it's just every single day there's something new filing coming in or out. So let me know in the comments what you think about Irwindale closing, Kyle Larson's high limit comments, plus the ongoing lawsuit between NASCAR and 2311 Racing Front Row Motorsports. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.